Dan Stevens' acting mastery takes center stage in a beautiful quantum composition that shows us all the possibilities. I guess that's why they've turned this season up to 11. Seriously. It's an astounding hour of television on this week's Legion, Chapter 14. Hey everyone, D here, and welcome to this week's review of Legion. So yes, of course, your standard spoiler warning applies. Wow. Just wow. God, that had to be one of the most amazing pieces of television I have seen for a long time. Beautifully composed, excellent environmental setting, and just, man, Dan Stevens, like I said, showing that acting mastery. So many different roles, so many variations on the character, and also very real, so very grounded. Every moment he is on screen, he is just embodying every bit of that character, from the madness to the serious to the darkness to the joy. Was just really amazing. And like I said, an amazing bit of composition that we got in this episode. How they opened everything up. I think that whole first sequence before we even got to the first commercial break was just astounding. As we're kind of getting introduced to all of these different variations of David. Whether it starts out with him as the bum, as the crazy bum. And again, each one of these we're seeing the environment set up first. We get a view of the world. We hear the sounds that were coming in. Everything takes its time. All of those slow pans through the world and then on to David, whether it be that movement through the darkness and the seedy side where we see him being a bum, to then when it comes up to his rich persona where we cap the girl in the pool, and then slowly from away from him, and we take all of that time slowly pushing into David. To when he's the old man, we catch his older sister preparing the food and then bringing it in so slowly, just hearing the sounds of David making of that aged frame. And then the beautiful one single shot, we got him when he's sitting there eating his dinner, moving so slowly. Everything takes a concerted effort. To that follow-up shot where we get that long pan going in. The great thing about all of this slow camera motion is it gives us that sense of time. It gives us that sense of permanence. Nothing is moving quickly. Everything is stretched out. It gives that eternal feel, so that how each of these lives has this weight and moment and long breath. Again, each of them gives it that permanent feel. So yeah, even just the whole opening of this episode, I think, set the mood, set the tone just beautifully. So of course what we're seeing in this episode are all of the different quantum realities, as our drugged up David put quite beautifully there in the cafe with the branches and the French fries. And again, it's one of those perfect sequences where he's talking about what's actually happening, what it is that we're seeing, but because he is this drugged out, manic persona here, version of David, it all sounds perfectly crazy. This is exactly what you would think the crazy person in the booth next to you is rambling on about. And yet it is exactly what we are seeing in this episode. All of the quantum realities, each of the choices that at some point David has made, which has then branched out and caused different life experiences. We have Druggy Dave, of course, who ended up staying on the street, never went back to his sisters, stuck there, and eventually became the mad old hermit guy that we see throughout. We have Milkmaid Drone Dave, who's basically the drugged out Dave, who has decided to stay with his sister. The only way to do that is to be heavily medicated. So that leads off to his world of working for the dairy factory. We've got the David that at some point takes kind of ownership of his psychic powers. The coffee boy David, as it were, who goes in and then makes the suggestion in the middle of the office, and that ends up rising him to the top of the ranks to become the most rigid person in the world, who, coincidentally, the person that probably believed in him saw his psychic powers and most likely took him under her wing. He, of course, then surpasses, and she ends up working for him. Another office drone Dave that probably at some point just got caught inside of the office. I mean, again, all of these different branches, all of these different possibilities of David's life represented here. And again, it's another one where I love how they did that layered composition, how we would actually move from scene to scene, often seeing a different version of Dave into the new one. We had the one where he's in the car with his sister, and that transitions out, and then we see Office Dave going, delivering coffee, Coffee Boy Dave delivering into the office. We got the one shot where we have Bum Dave pushing his cart, and then it obviously flashes back from the dairy there as he crosses over, and then we see younger David, who's drugged out, working in the dairy there. So it was just, I loved how they did all of these different pieces, because it takes you a moment to sort of grasp what's going on. Is this something inside of David's mind? Is he everybody in the world? He only seems to be some people in the world. So they compose this all really well to give us a very strong different feel, and those overlaying ideas that in some ways all of these are happening at the same time. They're just happening in kind of different parallel universes. One of the other things that this episode highlights is the importance of relationships in David's life. It's interesting to note that of all of the variations that we saw, I mean, outside of what we might call our prime timeline, the one that we are seeing in the show, of all these alternate timelines and possibilities for David's life, the only one where he actually seemed happy was suburban David. The one married with, he's got the wife and the 2.5 kids. That seemed to be the only one that we got just a couple of shots on where he actually seemed to be enjoying his existence. Everything else kind of goes along the breadth of madness, and a lot focused on his relationship with his sister, who is really the only family that he has left at this point, and really his primary caretaker. Without her, when he stays on the streets, he becomes crazy bum David. If he does decide to stay with her, he becomes drug David, who basically works at the dairy and heavily medicated so he doesn't hurt himself or anyone else, as we saw in that very frightening police scene. But that at that point, Liz stays with him his entire life, her entire life. They're inseparable. She spends her life then basically taking care of him. Now, if he does snap out of it and explore his psychic side, become Coffee Boy Dave, who becomes Rich Man Dave, his relationship's still constant with his sister, not so well. He is dark, he was manipulative, he sees himself as an instrument of God. Certainly reading everyone's mind, including his sister's, and inflicting pain too. She crosses him, or feels she crosses him, or just he gets the impulse, go ahead and psychically attack. We get that nasty dripping down the blood down the nose. And then, of course, we have our time primal. We have when David dies. Now, that could have been either in a variation where David successfully hung himself, or perhaps after the police scene when he gets shot, one that he recovers, one that he does not. If he recovers, then he becomes Old Man Dave, who we never saw walking. So that could result in spine injury, or he could have just been shot and injured. But we also have when he dies, that his sister's the only person that shows up to his gravesite. So again, it's showing up this importance of the relationship here. And ultimately, kind of their little break, which leads to our prime timeline. Beautiful last sequence where we saw that shot outside of Clockwork, where we can see all of the pain and anguish for both of them. For David not wanting to go and not wanting to be institutionalized, seeing all of these visions of things, which we're going to get to in just a moment here. They're obviously driving him nuts. And his sister, who is trying to be there for him, cares so much, and yet you can tell is really at her limit. You know, he tries to kill himself. There's not really all that much he can do. And I'm assuming the difference between this is the split between drugged out David and our prime David. If he stays and takes the drug, he becomes drugged out David working in the dairy. If he tosses that and decides to hang himself because he goes nuts, we go into the Clockworks David here. Which, like I said, was just a beautiful scene. It caught us up into our prime moment. And yet we see in that moment really the strength of their relationship. I mean, how much David is entrusting in her to make the right decisions for him. And we also see with her is how much she is trying to be there, trying to help, how much she cares, but she just can't have David around anymore. His presence is toxic. And that the difficulties that choice is for her, and the kind of pain that elicits out. I think it was just an extremely powerful moment that really, like I said, sums up the strength of their relationship. All right, now there were a lot of amazing scenes in this. I mean, there were 3 or 4 kind of that really stand out. So which was the best? Kind of hard to choose. But we do have to pick one. So this is our Scene of the Week for this week. And this is the attack scene for Bum David, old Bum David, when he is sleeping in the tunnel and the group of ruffians come and try to rough him up. One, I love the framing of this. I loved how it was shot. We never see the attackers at all. They are all constantly in silhouette. And with the top hats and everything, very much an homage to Stanley Kubrick's 1971 classic, A Clockwork Orange, which of course has a very similar scene where Malcolm McDowell and his band of droogs show up in an underpass to beat up an old man, though here of course things end quite a bit differently. And now the film is interesting also about a man trying to get over his urge of ultra-violence, trying to be fixed, trying to get better through an institution, and eventually that falls apart, and the secret to him getting better is actually embracing himself of who he is. So a lot of interesting little parallels here, but I just love that whole setup. It gave a very timeless feel to it, as this show is very good at doing. But we also see David, again, as this old bum, in a way, at his end. He's giving up. He kind of wants to be attacked. Well, part of him does. He's tired of this world and this life and spaceships and people on the moon and all that crazy stuff. Nobody deserves to get jumped by a bunch of ruffians here. And his defense was shocking. I mean, and I think that's what did it. First, we had the Clockwork Orange reference at the beginning. We've got the sort of whole staging. You're thinking this is the end of David. This is how this particular life goes. And it is not. We see a brand new power of David's. Shocking. Nuked basically, energy explosion out. We get that sound coming out of him, and then boom, gone. Not even sound, nothing. Just all we see left are shadows on the ground. And that's nuclear. That's what you see from victims of Hiroshima, Nagasaki, man. Just all that's left are shadows on walls, which just shows that immense power that we have, that he has inside of him. And certainly, in a kind of crazy mind, not a good thing for the world around him. So yeah, just an amazing sequence out of the shock for that and the sort of film reference. But again, not the only great scene that we had in this episode. Office Drone David with the dancing mouse or the singing mouse rather, was hilarious. Slave to Love. It was just, again, it was one of those cute little moments. I thought that might actually go on for a while and we'd have a whole dance sequence, but it didn't really pan out that way. We also have the unfortunate future of drugged out David working in front of the dairy there when the cops pull him over. I mean, that was a really creepy scene too. I think really well orchestrated. How we have the Shadow King starting to pop off. I mean, is David's meds wearing down here? Is he a little more conscious? And so this is starting to invade into his psyche a little bit more. And this was kind of the only time that we saw Farouk in this. We did get a glimpse of him with Rich David in another beautifully shot scene where he's got the dancers in silhouette behind him and he's just in the blue light, and then it looks like he's talking to Farouk. This is almost like a life that Farouk would approve of, being the richest, most powerful man on the planet. It seems to be more of a goal for him. But here in the sequence we see he's not Farouk, he's the devil with the yellow eyes, popping through that opaque, you can almost see through him. He's there, but he's not there, and he starts in the distance, and then he's moving forward, and then he pops inside the back of the police car. I mean, very freaky, very disturbing. And yes, I think the officer's kind of overreacted here. I love do you have any ID? Just peels the shirt back. David gives his ID tag. Was awesome. But here we see the same type of thing. Don't push David too far, and don't push his sister. We're again talking about the relationship between him and his sister. She's there doing their everything for him. So she's trying to defend from the cops. They push her away. The moment that she gets hurt, that's when he reacts. Tosses one up in the air, and then ends up getting shot. Which, could lead to a couple. Is he paralyzed in the future? Does he die from that wound? We have all those different branches. But even in there, wiping out all of the cops. So, does he even get caught? Nobody saw anything. Nobody who saw anything is still around, at least. They're all shadows on the ground. So again, that was just a beautifully done sequence. And then the last one that I wanted to talk about is, of course, the other old bum David, when he gets attacked by the SWAT team, Special Forces team. Which again is just beautifully done. We just have crazy guy in the park. And then he's here, you can see he's sensing everyone coming in, and then we've got the whole team coming up to him, and they open fire, and boom, now he's got a personal shield. Okay, well that's a useful one. And then with the swing of the arm, we got cops flying everywhere. It was just, they every attack with drones with sound. I mean, this was almost the scene of the week because there's so much great stuff. But it was just, I think the first one really established that this was just sort of a build off of that. And then, of course, you get the final shot where the drone's coming and he's going to do the whole nuclear blow of everyone. And then it's Carrie who pops up and slices him right down with the sword. Just as beautiful. Again, nice cameo. These other people are still out in the world just with all these variations. So I thought that was really cool. Love that last bit. And that one is also important in its own way because the scene immediately after that is we have teen David in the rain screaming. And to me what that said, and it's intimated beforehand, it's intimated when we have drug David when he's younger talking about different quantum realities. One possibility, he's suburban dad. Another one, branches make branches, make branches, make branches. The next scene after that is Liz snapping her fingers and kind of waking David up in the blue and white shirt, which we know is kind of the prime timeline David. So we have that little moment, which sort of intimates things. Then we have this one afterwards. We have after David gets sliced in half, the next shot we see is a younger David screaming into the air. We also get, like I said, when David was talking with his sister there at the end there of all the stuff that he's seen. What seems to imply with all of this is that at some point David is seeing all of these alternate futures. Those are some of the crazy visions that he has had over his lifetime. Even shots of the baby. We've got that beautiful shot where we have office drone David sniffing glue, and we have suburban David playing with the kids, and we have Liz visiting David's grave, and then we have another shot of baby David sort of looking all wide-eyed and like taking it all in. I think these are parts of the aspects of David's other personality part, is that he can, in fact, in some level, perceive all of these realities. Which brings us to our final question: why have this episode at all? What is the importance of these episodes of showing all of these different possibilities? And that is summed up in our last little bit, that beautiful montage. After David gets sent off to Clockworks, and then we see that's the sort of our prime timeline. And we get that beautiful montage of all of last season into this season, of everything that has happened. and that quote with Farouk. You choose your reality. It's about will. To me, what that's saying here is that David has seen all of these different timelines. He has the ability to see all of these different potential futures. And it's up to him to choose which one he wants. Obviously, that takes a lot of power, that takes a lot of concentration. That's something that he's going to have to develop. But I think that is the theme of this particular episode. David has, at some point, seen all of these different possibilities. Perhaps seeing those futures and those possibilities might even have steered him to his current reality, which, again, outside of suburban David, is the best case, and in fact really is the best case, because despite all of the difficulties and traumas and conflicts that he has had, he is really becoming himself. He's not mad David that has been taken over by Farouk and is now the most powerful, richest man in the world. He's not insane, drugged out David that has tried to push everything away and been off of his med and lets his mind kind of fall apart with all the pushes and suggestions from Farouk. He's not drugged out David that has constantly just medicated himself until he basically dies an old man who can barely feed himself and has to be constantly taken care of, ruining in some ways his sister's life, who is committed to taking care of him. Has he seen all of these different possibilities? And that is what made him believe in his sister to make that choice to go into Clockworks, which led to, of course, all of last season and then up to what we have now. So I think that is what we're seeing with this episode. This is the intimation that there are these multiple timelines, there are these multiple possibilities, but David has that ability to see those on some level. And therefore, it really is up to him to choose what his future reality is going to be. All right, just a couple of small things. One, don't know how many Castle fans we have out there, but it was really fun to see Seamus Deaver pop up here. He was, of course, in the Coffee Boy David timeline there, the one that was trying to make the deal without revealing about the fires, the 302 fires that have occurred with his product. Anyway, it was just, you never know where people are going to show up after a show is canceled, so it was just fun seeing him. Office Drone Dan had an incredible part in his hair, man. It's like, did they have to shave that, or did they use wax in order to get that all separated and perfect? Anyway, that was just, that was a powerful part right there. Rich David keeping his old boss around because she resents him, and he likes that. That's all really kind of dark, but I mean, not the only dark thing going on with that. I love that his sister is arguing about her husband, Harvey, is screwing his masseuse, and so is she, screwing the same masseuse, I think was what we were getting out of that conversation. Man, things get dark in that timeline. One of the other great musical bits here was Gorecki's Symphony No. 3. That's the very operatic sounding bit when we see Office Drone David sniffing glue and Suburban David playing with his kids in the pool, his sister going to visit David's grave. The Gorecki Symphony No. 3, also known as the Symphony of Sorrowful Songs. It's in 3 parts. It's dealing with loss. Primarily, again, 3 parts. The first and the third deals with a mother, a parent losing their son, whereas the middle part is an orphan losing their parents. So very much, again, signs of loss, and very appropriate how, where that's used within this episode. Also, one of my wife's favorite pieces of music. So yeah, recognized it instantly. Anyone else think the little meds inside Clockworks look like tiny little slices of kiwis? And then when you added the extra pill, it was like 2 slices of kiwi and a little slice of pie afterward. Or ice cream, maybe. I don't know, they look like food. And finally, when I said they were turning this season up to 11, I was entirely serious. As we know, last season, season 1 was 8 episodes. They had turned the order for this season for 10 episodes, but last week, they upped this season's episode number to 11. They're adding 1 more episode. So, interesting how they're doing that. I would have thought that the whole thing would have been shot and done by now and just going through editing. So I'm not sure where they're adding that. Are they adding a coda? Are they building an extra thing into next season? Or are they slipping something in for backstory? Not entirely sure. But, like I said, one extra episode this season. Nothing wrong with that. Not the way they're doing it. Cannot wait to see what they do. Oh, I want to give a quick shout out to one of our viewers, Todd Shuttleworth. She was asking about David's sister very early on in the season, right after the first episode, wondering when we were going to see her. And, well, we got her last episode and this episode. So she is back, definitely playing a very powerful role, very motivational role for David this season. So, good ass there, Todd. All right, well, I think that wraps up everything for this week. Thank you so much for joining me on this review. We got 6 more episodes left. Was going to be 5. This was the midpoint, and now I guess kind of the midpoint, almost the midpoint. 6 more episodes to go. A lot more story, and David is definitely going after Farouk. So this is really going to start to twist things up. Cannot wait to see all of that coming. So, thanks again for joining me. If you enjoyed this review, please go ahead and hit that like button. Thoughts, ideas, and comments, throw those down in the section below. Now you can always catch me on Twitter and Instagram. I am at Darren Jakes. Please subscribe if you're not a subscriber. Quick, easy, one button hit. Catch the rest of these reviews. Plus, we're wrapping up Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., got Westworld, which is amazing. Preacher coming up in the summer, so don't miss any of that. We'll throw a couple of these here you can check out. So that's going to be it for me. I am D, and I'm out of here. Catch you guys next time. Bye-bye.